Hello and welcome to Tools to Create a Better Life with myself, Glenyce Hughes. Thank you so much for being here. I am so incredibly grateful for each and every one of you. And as you may have noticed, there's been some changes. I now do this podcast in multiple places and ways. So you can find it on video, on YouTube, different Facebook pages and groups. You can find it on IGTV. You can find it on my webpage. You can find it through Tools to Create a Better Life, my podcast. You can also find it on SoundCloud and probably places I've forgotten, but there's so many places now, and I'm so incredibly grateful for all of these spaces and places as this can be shared. And if you love it, if you receive something from this, I would be so grateful if you would share it with your peeps, with your friends, fans, whoever, wherever. I am just grateful. Anyway, let's talk about today's show. Is this a necessity or a choice? So this is something that we talk about, of course, in Access Consciousness, which is the tools that I share in all of the things I do. And really, that question is to get you into recognizing when you're operating from necessity, which is actually a huge limitation, and get you into recognizing that everything is actually a choice. But anything that we do from necessity limits the choices that we have, or it limits the awareness that we have of the choices. Yeah, I know, right? So this is something that I use and have been, I would say, using a lot over the past few months. I noticed that I was operating from a lot of necessity or even need. To me, need and necessity have a very similar energy. So, I needed to get so many hours of sleep at night. I needed to work out a certain amount each week. I needed to eat or to not eat, or I needed, it was necessity to. And what that does is it totally limits what's actually possible. It also puts, at least for me, it would put me in this place of feeling like I didn't have choice. And I don't know if you're anything like me, but if you ever feel like you don't have choice, what I often do is I fight it. So if I feel like it's a necessity to do something, then even if it's going to create more, I fight it. So how does it get any better than that? And this is a question that you want to start asking yourself if this is something you'd like to be changing. Is this a necessity or is this a choice? Because the more that you can recognize and acknowledge that everything is a choice, it changes everything. Because then we actually just have a choice. Would we like to choose that or not? And then we can actually start asking questions. But when you're operating from something being a necessity, there's no room for question. There's no room for awareness because it's a necessity, so you have to, or the other person has to, or the situation has to, or whatever it is, rather than truth, is this a necessity, or truth, is this a choice? And if you look at your life, the things that you maybe force yourself to do or have to push yourself or those sorts of things, chances are you're operating from the energy that they're a necessity. And I know for myself, like with exercise in particular, that's been a fight that I have fought with myself, other than the last year and a half, or actually very close to 2 years actually. But prior to that, it was a constant battle because I was operating from necessity. I had to do it, which meant most of the time I didn't do it. Cute, not bright. And then, as I'm sure if you've listened to my stuff, you've probably heard me tell the story, but in case you haven't heard this story, it was December of 2018, and hubby and I were in Bali. There was this beautiful possibility for us to jump off a cliff into beautiful water, and then climb up the side of a waterfall, and then actually water slide down the waterfall. which to me just was like just the most magical thing a person could do. And what I was very clear on, my body was very clear with me, was that no, diving in would be fine. Even probably getting up and going down the waterfall would have been fine. But physically, it wouldn't have been easy to get out of the water. Plus, once you got out, it was a hell of a climb back up. So we kind of went like down, down, down to the spot. And so I still had to go back up. And I was just very, very clear that that was not going to be ease. And my body was very loud about that, which I was so grateful for. But it also really smacked me in the face with all the choices that I'd been choosing up to that moment were not congruent with me living life to the absolute fullest. So what I chose was, when we got back in January of 2019, was I started seeing a personal trainer and have been seeing her ever since. And so, if ever I go into that energy of like, oh, I don't want to go, oh, no, that sort of an energy, then I really look at, okay, is this a necessity or is this a choice? Because as soon as I acknowledge that it's a choice, it's like, wow, this is a choice, which means I don't have to choose it and I can choose it. But the minute I acknowledge it's a choice, now I can actually ask a question like, hey, what will create the future I desire? Which is going, for the most part. I mean, there's times, of course, that body says no, and that's different. But really, if I'm looking at the choices that I made when I, prior to me being in Bali with that possibility, those were not the choices that really created what I desired physically. And so now I've been choosing the choices that mean I don't limit when I go somewhere. Now, of course, with COVID, we haven't been doing near as much. But prior to COVID, with the travel, like I didn't have to say no to things. We went, oh gosh, what's that called when you stand on a board in the water? Oh my gosh. Anyway, did this really cool thing in Australia last November that I've been like wanting to do my entire life. Gosh, it'll come to me. I'll let you know. And also we were in Washington last April maybe? And so like a year ago, like 2019, and we walked like 14 kilometers in one day around the city. It was so beautiful and it was just amazing. And that, like all the things that now I just know that if there's something I'd like to do physically, I'm ready for it. And I feel so much stronger and I feel so much better. But if it would have been from the necessity, I wouldn't have continued it. And maybe I'd have went a few times, but it wouldn't have been with the energy of what's actually possible in the space of choice. And so look at those things. Maybe yours isn't moving your body. Maybe yours is certain foods that you've made a necessity not to eat or to eat. And the minute we make it that necessity, we take it out of choice. But with that, I mean, no different than physical movement, of course, but what if your body would like that thing? Like, this is where this reality has really, for me, I've really taken it to heart. I was on my first diet at age of 9. So, I have a lot of information about good food and bad food, and none of that is true. There's no such thing as a bad food. There's no such thing as a good food. It's like, body, what would you like to have right now? If it would like to have anything. So that you're in a totally different space than, oh, I need to have fruits and vegetables, or I need to drink a certain amount of water. And I tell this story years ago, the internet was fairly new in our world. So I don't even know, was that in the late 90s it kind of became a thing, or 2000? I'm not sure, but a long time ago. And I'd heard about this webpage that you could type in your weight and it would tell you how much water you should drink. Notice the necessity of should, right? Like how much water I should drink. So I typed it in and it was a lot. It was a lot for my weight. And so I started drinking that because it was the right thing to do. It was the necessary thing to do. And within a few weeks I was at the doctor's because something was wrong, and I didn't know what, but something was wrong. Yeah, guess what? My electrolytes were totally out of balance because I was drinking too much water because there was no question to my body. Now back then I didn't have questions for my body. I didn't have even the awareness that my body was something I could commune with. But I was over drinking. I had too much water. And so it's just so interesting, when we look at those things that probably we've been told, that is often the energy of necessity or necessary. Even with eating, prior to this year, prior to 2020, I would have told you, you need to eat every day. Your body needs food for energy. Even though I knew other information, I was still operating from the need of food. And then in 2020, in January, actually, hubby and I both started. I started first. I did it for a few weeks, and then he joined, where we eat, pretty much we eat every second day. So there's somewhere between 38 to 42 hours where we don't eat. And we haven't died. In fact, we have released a whole bunch of weight each. We feel so much better. Life is so much more ease. It's so interesting of how much food our body doesn't need and doesn't have a necessity of, that I would have fought you on if you would have told me last December to not eat for an entire day. I would have had some very interesting points of views. Now, I don't mean that's your body too. I just mean for hubby and I and the way that our bodies are, this works really well. And for some bodies, eating every 2 hours works really well. And for some bodies, one day eating every 2 hours and the next day not eating, and all the things, right? So we want to stay in the choice of it. We have a choice. If we make it a choice, what would we like to choose? And we start asking questions, which is ultimately what we're looking for. Because when we ask questions, we tap into our awareness. It opens us up to the possibilities. But if we have the necessity for food, there's no awareness. There's only, what am I going to eat? Not, am I going to eat? Body, would you like to eat? No. In fact, the words that I use with my body is, body, would you like to swallow this? And, thinking about a food or something like that, because our bodies are so magical that when you're preparing a meal, even if you don't put anything in your mouth, your body can receive so much from that food because your body doesn't need to ingest it to receive from it. We've bought the point of view. We've been told that we have to ingest it to receive from it, but it's not true. We are infinite receiving. That's what we be. That's what our bodies be. We're infinitely receiving, which means we can be making dinner and not feel like eating after. And I know I've had that so many times, especially prior to this year, where I would cook the meal and then I would not be hungry anymore. Of course, I would still eat because it was necessary. And now I realize that no, body, she's so magical. She can receive from everything. That's why when we're really busy and we're really doing something that lights us up, we often forget to eat, or we don't think about what time it is, or we're not worried about our next meal because of that. And we're nourished by that deliciousness of what we're creating or what we're doing or who we're spending our time with, compared to the necessity of, I have to put food in so I have energy. I don't know if you've ever noticed, but a lot of times when you eat, you don't feel really energized after. A lot of your energy actually goes into digesting it. Anyway, so just something to think about with the things you've decided are necessary. Even, let's say, picking up your kids from school. Yeah, I know there's a lot of energy on that. What? Of course, that's necessary. I don't mean you shouldn't go pick them up. Just recognize that. But just recognize that if you see it as a necessity, there's no awareness in it. There's no space in it. There's no joy in it. There's no question in it. There's no possibility in it. But if you see it as a choice, all of a sudden at least for me, there's a lightness. There's a spaciousness. There's a, I get to. I remember years and years ago when probably first couple of years of starting my business, and I had a speaking possibility. So I was going to go onto a stage and talk to a group of people. And I was sharing with a friend, I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to go do this speaking event, and I'm nervous and I'm all these things. And she just looked at me and she said, Glenyce, you get to do this speaking event. You don't have to do it. You get to do it. And it was such a kind of that moment of like, wow, I had really misidentified what it was, because I knew a lot of people, and probably a lot of people I didn't know, that would have loved that possibility. So for me to act like I have to do it and it's so horrible, and I, like, come on, but I get to do it. And there's no different. I was seeing it as a necessity, where she was reminding me, this is a choice. Like, you can actually just phone them up and say no if it's just as traumatic as you're making it. Of course it wasn't. I was just being whatever, and so once you see things as a choice, like everything is a choice. Everything is a choice. If you hate the job you go to, if you see it as a necessity, you're going to continue hate it and spinning in the distraction of it. But if you're willing to recognize it's a choice, okay, I get to go to this job today, then all of a sudden you can start asking other questions like, I wonder what it would be like to have fun at the job today. Or I wonder what it would be like to find a job that I loved going to. Like, start turning it around so you don't have to quit, but recognize it is a choice. You can choose not to go, and you can go on, government assistance, or you can ask family or friends for money, or you could sell things, or there's a billion things you could choose, as long as you recognized it's a choice. And then suddenly, at least, like, to me, it just has such a lighter energy, because anytime we feel like we have choice, there's more space. Because even in the acknowledgement it's a choice, we're going to have an awareness, we're going to have space, we're going to have possibilities show up. So just start asking yourself, is this truth? Is this a necessity or a choice? So that you can recognize everything you're doing is a choice. So if it isn't working, what other choices could you be choosing? What action could you be taking? Yeah, and I mean, we can even go extreme. I know some of you will probably yell at me right now, but we could go extreme and just say, how about lack of money? Is that a necessity, or is that a choice? Or lack of whatever it is that you would like more of, or some of. If you don't have enough lovers, is the necessity of lovers, is it a necessity, or is it a choice to have a lack of lovers? Yeah, because what if we are the creators of our lives and our living, and everything we're doing is a choice? Everything we're experiencing, everything we're actualizing is what we've chosen. So if you don't like your money situation, what can you be and do different to change it? What can you be and do different today to change it? What action can you take? What magic can you be? What else is possible that you've never even considered? If you look at that money situation as, okay, I've chose this. Now, I know right now a lot of people would fight me on this, and they'd say, Glenyce, I didn't choose this. This is all about COVID. COVID is the reason that I'm struggling with money. And I would smile and nod and say, okay. But I wouldn't believe your limitation. But I wouldn't fight you for it either. I would just say, okay, and smile and nod. And if you said to me, can you say more about that, Glenyce? Then I would say something like, well, truth. Have you given your power over to COVID? Is COVID more potent than you? Or whatever it is. You might be saying your employer, you might be saying your investments. I mean, whatever it is that you're saying, I don't have money because. You want to look at because that's where you've given your power to. There's no because. You've chose it. You've chose it. Now, it's not that we go into, well, you chose it and you're wrong, so you get to judge you. It's not that. Acknowledge that you chose it. And now what? Now what would you like to choose? So you're like, okay, well, this lack of money doesn't work for me, so what would I like to choose? Like to choose money. Okay, so what is that going to take? We go back to the questions. What can I be and do different today to actualize more money right away? What else is possible I've never even considered? What am I refusing to be that if I would be it would change my financial situation? Like we go again, we acknowledge it as a choice, we acknowledge we created it, then we go into question. And then when things show up, be aware of that. So if somebody phones you and says, hey, I'm looking for someone to paint my house, would you be interested? You don't go straight to no. And I don't mean you have to say yes. That's not what I'm saying. But you want to look at that, be like, oh, interesting. I've been asking for more money to show up. Here's a possibility. And then we go to another question. We don't make it a necessity that we have to say yes, but we look at, okay, here's a choice. I have a choice here. So the questions I like to use in these situations, truth, if I choose to say yes to painting their house, would it create the future I desire or decay the future I desire? Create it? Cool. Say yes. Keep following the energy like that. And that's how you will get to creating whatever it is you'd like to create. Hubby and I watched this game show. It's called Pointless. It's from England. And we actually went last August. We went and watched it in person when we were in England. It was awesome. So, but we still watch it on TV. It's on YouTube and we watch it. And so last night they were asking about authors' names of books that were originally, the manuscripts that were originally denied. So J.K. Rowling, author of the Harry Potter series, she had taken her book, I'm not sure how many different places, and to publishers, and they're like, nope, nope, nope. And the person who said yes, or one of the people, I'm not sure exactly the whole story, but what they were saying was the final part, or the one that said yes initially, said, okay, we'll give you $1,500, but please don't quit your day job. Like, right? And I mean, there was a whole list of authors, and I'm sure there's all sorts of stories that we could talk about with that. So you want to look at that for yourself. Thank goodness J.K. Rowling didn't stop. She didn't go, oh, they're right. They know. She didn't hand her power over to them. Now, maybe she did for a little while. I have never talked to her. I don't know. I haven't listened to her whole story. I don't know exactly what occurred, but I do know she didn't stop, because she didn't just stop at the one book for $1,500. Somewhere, somehow, she created more because she didn't stop, because she continued to choose it, no matter what other people around her said. And to me, this is what each one of us has to do. We have to be willing to have our own back. So if you're looking at actualizing more money, don't listen to people around you who say you can't. Don't listen to the people who say, oh, it's COVID and nobody has any money anytime, or everybody's struggling right now, or there's always problems. Or like, I don't mean you should tell those people to shut up, because that's not going to create more either. But know for you that you are the most potent energy in your life, and you are the only one who can actually create what you'd like in your life. So if you listen to them, you're going to let it stop you. But if you have your own back, you'll be like, okay, what's next then? What's next? What's next? Universe, show me the next step. Show me the next step. Show me the next step, so that you're not stopping. You're always choosing towards what you would like. Yeah. No, I said the word universe. So it made me think of a class that I would love for you to come play. My sweet friend Crystal Crawford and I are playing together in Ontario, but don't worry, you can join us online. We have 2 classes, a class about money, a class about business, and it's called Universe, I'll Have That. Now, you don't have to choose both classes, and of course you could. So Universe, I'll Have That, money, business, or both. We also have one day only for a VIP day with her and I and your business. So if you go to the sales page for that, then you'll see how to apply for that position and how to register for the other classes. If you've got any questions, let me know. We'll have the link somewhere around, and if you can't find it, just reach out to her or I. We would just love for you to come play. So back to the show. I just had that moment of like, oh, I just said the word universe. And of course, also, I have foundations, guys. I have online foundations, I have online and in-person foundations. At this point, November 15th is the final day for us to offer them online. And that might change. Access is just following along to see what happens in terms of travel restrictions and stuff. So if it doesn't change, then the November class that I've got in early November will be the final foundation online. But of course it could be extended to who knows. We'll find out. Anyway, hashtag get your butt to foundation. So anyway, necessity or choice? Yeah. So what if you start acknowledging that everything in your life is a choice? That there is no necessity whatsoever. You need nothing. You do not need food. You do not need water. You do not need hugs. You do not need money. You do not need nothing. Everything is a choice. And what choices are you refusing that you truly could be choosing, that if you would choose them, would actualize as everything you desire showing up as if by magic? Yes, yes. So thank you for listening in or watching. I'm so incredibly grateful for you all, and I look forward to chatting with you again soon.